Hello, how is everyone doing today? So, this is the first of the last 2 weeks that are going to be delivered online because things have happened recently. But I do like doing online courses, and I've done this before. As some of you may know, back in I think June or July, when the big sad was upon us. Um, And yeah, it was great fun, so I'm very happy to do it again. And thankfully, because I'm doing this online, I am streaming from my house, and I have access to some of the software and things that I don't normally have access to in Mawson Lakes. So today we're going to be talking about cities in Blender. Now, if you recall, back a couple of weeks ago, I did show you guys a tutorial, very briefly, that exists on YouTube that tells you how to make a city in Blender um, that looks very professional. Now, because I've only got a couple of hours to prepare this lesson, I'm going to make this very, very simple and just explain it in concepts, okay? That's what we're going to do. I'm not going to ask you guys you don't have to follow along, um, because this is actually quite complicated in terms of working through Blender and doing the software and things like that. But if you want, you can. I will show you guys the resources I used to make this city and how you can do it yourself if you follow the tutorial that I found on YouTube. So you can go ahead and do that, and also you can rewatch this video after it's finished. The stream will be on my channel. You can watch it as many times as you want. So there we go. Now, there is actually a delay between when I say things and do things and when you will receive them. The delay is about like 2 seconds. It's not that big of a deal, but just to let you know, I won't be answering any chat questions until I finish the class, okay? So about the last 10-15 minutes um, will be reserved for that. Okay, I think there's some connection problems. Let me just check. If it's your computer, I can't do anything about that, but according on to my side, I have a good connection, so I don't think it has anything to do with my network. Let me see. Okay, so yeah, it could be your internet connection. Unfortunately, I can't do much about that. Australia's internet, as you know, is one of the worst in the world, so we have that deficiency. It's a bit of a shame. Who can actually see it properly? So if it buffers, that means that there's a poor connection either on my side or your side. Should be on your side because YouTube is telling me I have the perfect connection. Yep. So yeah, I'll try my best to optimize my side of the connection, but if it's something to do with your internet, unfortunately I can't do much about that. But thankfully, don't worry, when the stream ends, you guys will still be able to watch the whole thing backwards, and you won't need to buffer when the stream finishes. So don't worry too much about that. The stream will be up and you can watch it as many times as you want. Okay, that's an interesting issue. I have not heard about that one before. Who actually has good connection? Who can watch the stream perfectly? Okay. Is my sound alright? Can you guys hear me properly? According to my stream, my volume is quite high. So if you can't hear me, perhaps try turning up your volume. That might be the issue. Yeah, have a go with that. Cool, cool. All right. So we will be starting at 4 o'clock in another 9 minutes or so. But let me just guide you through. Let me explain basically what I'm going to do before the lesson starts, so that you guys are very clear on what I'm doing today. So this is not a tutorial so much so as me explaining the basics of how people will model cities in Blender. So I'm just looking at the volume issues. Okay. All right, I have my input on max volume, so I don't think I can change that much. Yep. Okay. So for some of you who are not hearing me quite well, it could be your device. If you're listening on your phone, that might be the issue, because if you're on a phone or a tablet, the output speaker is pretty quiet. So you might want to plug in some headphones or something like that. If you have any, that could help. Hmm. Okay. But as I was saying, this class is going to be me showing you how I made the city in Blender, and the very basic steps, the production steps to making it. Okay, so it's not going to be just a tutorial on how to use the software, because as we all know, you guys who have had experience with Blender know that it takes a lot of time to learn. Okay, and you can do this at home if you're dedicated enough, and some of you have been very dedicated and actually done some cool things on Blender outside of class. So I think that this is one of those things that you can do outside of class, and you should experiment with. So that's that. The other thing is, we'll talk about that later. So good. Okay. So until 4 o'clock, if you guys still have any issues with audio, just let me know. If there are any issues with the stream, that are on your side, I can try and troubleshoot for you, but I won't know exactly what you're doing. In general, try and swap to a computer or laptop if possible. And if you can't, use earphones or headphones. That's the best option. Right now, I'm using earphones and it's working fine for me, and I'm on a laptop, so that's the best. Okay. I'm going to just grab myself some water, so just hang tight, and we'll start in a couple of minutes. All right, guys. The reason why there's 7 people watching, and there's only 3 of you on chat, is because if you don't have an account on YouTube, or you're browsing through someone not your own account, you can't actually type in chat. So um, yeah, that's okay, because Well, I won't be able to answer all your questions anyway. We won't have that much time, but I'll try and get through as many as possible by 1:30. Did I start an advent calendar for Christmas? Um, no, I did not. But I have been writing up um, some plans for the coming summer break and possibly next year. All right. Well, we might as well start now. It's pretty much 4 o'clock. Um, so one thing I should make clear again, if you just joined, I won't be answering any questions until 1:30, and then the last 15 minutes I'll be answering all your questions at once. Simply because I don't want to break any of this class into little bits and pieces that might um, stop the flow of the lesson. So that's the reason why. Okay. So let's begin. All right. You guys might be able to see this on my screen. This is my Blender city. Now, this is, well, first I'll explain that there are two ways you can make a city in Blender. Okay. Let me bring up my notes. Okay, so you can, all right, you guys have done some Blender modeling before, as you might recall, and the modeling process for buildings is exactly the same as modeling of spaceships or whatever it is. You simply take a reference image of a building or a skyscraper, or whatever kind of structure you want to build, and then you model that object in 3D. Now, this usually consists of expanding a cube, and basically shaping a cube into like a tall building or something, and then duplicating that and making lots of those buildings to make up your city. Now, I call this well, you guys can understand this concept as building a city piece by piece, right? Which is what I'm going to call this. It's not the official term, but it's an easy way to think about it, right? So piece by piece, where you individually build buildings, model them on your own, and then you basically put them in your scene, uh, each one on, arrange them on a street or whatever. Now, that's the first way, right? Which is not actually the method I used to make the city. The second method is called generation. Okay, you can automatically generate cities through a template. Okay, so this sounds obviously really cool, and this is actually the way I made the city that you can see in my in the screen. Okay, all right. So you can the way city generation works is do you guys know about Google Maps, right? You've seen what satellite view from Google Maps looks like. Well, basically there's a plugin on Blender which I might be able to bring up. Let's just put up preferences. Right, let me pull that down. Okay, so there is a plugin called OpenStreetMap. This one here. Okay, and what this does, it's not in the Blender package by default. You do have to download it yourself, but it is free. I would only download it if you know what you're doing, because it is a little bit difficult to install. Anyway, what this OpenStreetMap does is that it allows you to import real-life cities, the templates of the real-life cities, from Google Maps or an equivalent, right? So from Google Maps, say you navigated to San Francisco or Sydney, something like that, you can actually rip off a portion of that city and place it and use it to auto-generate a city, which is what I've done here. This city here is actually Los Angeles, a part of the Central Business District. So what it basically did for me is it pulled out the templates for every single building in the screenshot of the city that I took, which is this large rectangle here, as you can see from the top, and it basically constructed a building for every single building that was in this area. Okay, which is really cool. The process is actually really cool. And if you have some time to follow the online Blender City tutorial, I highly recommend it. It is a little bit complicated, but it's totally worth it. Okay. So basically what this did was, I'm going to move into out of textured mode so you can see what it looks like on its base. It looks like this without any kind of texture. Okay. And this auto generation doesn't come with any textures. You have to slap your own textures on top. Now, if you guys remember, I showed you how to do texturing, right? And if you guys remember how to do texturing, you basically are painting or you are scaling images on top of existing 3D models. Yes. So that's basically what you have to do for this auto-generated city, because it doesn't come with any textures by itself, right? So here's what I did, actually. I'll turn on shaded mode again, okay? What I did was, I actually pulled a glass texture, right, from Google, and I applied it to all the walls of each building, which is why they all look like the same building, really. They don't really look that great. I didn't put that much effort into it because I only had a couple of hours to fix this up for you guys. And the streets, as you can see here, they are actually taken from the Google map itself. So basically, the actual map of Los Angeles, I took a screenshot of that and I painted it on top of the roads, right? And that's why the roads look real, because they're actually from the Google Maps satellite imagery. Okay. Now that's all well and good. All right. So this is an auto-generated city, and for you guys, you might think, "Wow, that looks amazing. Why would I ever want to do piece by piece if I can just do this, right?" Well, let me explain. If I were to, let me actually zoom in into one of the cities. All right. You'll see that it looks pretty ugly when you zoom in really far. Okay, I don't know if it shows up on your screen. On my screen, it looks pretty ugly. Okay, there's a couple of reasons why the resolution is so low. First of all, there is no modeling detail to any of these buildings because it's mass generated. They are basically just cubes essentially. These things are just cubes that have textures attached to them. Okay, so if you zoom out, I was going to zoom out again. It looks pretty good when you zoom out, right? It looks, it's not such a big deal if you zoom out, because when you look at the city from the large perspective, right, every one of these buildings only makes up a small part of the whole image, right? So the resolution is not a big deal, okay? If the in contrast, if you were to do piece by piece, right, you could add as much detail to any one of these buildings as you wanted, because it's an individually modeled object. These are mass modeled objects, which means that if I were to click, I'm selecting the entire city at once, all right? Which is a bit of a pain if you wanted to give some more detail to these buildings. You can't do that with a mass generated city, okay? But you can do that if your city is made piece by piece, okay? So let me show you the advantages. I've got this notes here. I'll show you the advantages of piece by piece versus generated. Okay. So first of all, if you're using a piece by piece setup, it is time consuming, but it will look very good close up. All right, and it can be used with visual effects. What that means is that you can blow up the buildings, you can destroy them with cool, explosions and those kind of things. You can apply visual effects to them. With a generated city, it's quick, all right? It's simple. It looks pretty bad close up, all right? And it can't be used with VFX, all right? So that's a really big issue. So if you are going to recreate something like Batman, in his Batmobile, cruising down the city and then smashing into a building, you wouldn't be able to do that with this mass generated city. That is the explosion part, because the building you wouldn't be able to apply the collapsing building effects to those buildings. So what can we do to improve this process? Here's the way I would do it. I would use a generator for long shots or landscapes, which means that, as I showed you just earlier, this city here, okay, as long as I don't zoom in, it's fine. It looks good like this. This is a long shot, by the way. It means it's not a close-up. Okay. So I would use the auto-generated city to portray these kinds of animations. If you're just doing like really far up drone shots or something like that, that's perfect. Okay. I would do piece by piece for close-up images, such as let me just put that in. If I were to zoom in, right, to one of these buildings, okay. Say I wanted to have a character walk along the street, all right, I would make those buildings piece by piece so that they don't look ugly when my character is really up close. Okay. So that's the reason why you would do piece by piece versus generated maps. Okay. There's advantages to be had for both sides. All right. So let me show you the texturing part. Okay. Now I did mention that all the buildings have the same texture. Okay. this city basically uses a glass window texture that I repeated over for every single building. For a generated map, to make this, if I were to improve this, what I would do would be I would actually select like maybe half or some of the buildings and give them glass textures, and the other ones I'd give them a different building window texture so that it would be varied and they wouldn't look all like the same building, if that makes sense. Okay. The rooftops is a bit of a mess. The reason is because what I did was I ripped off the rooftops from the real Google Maps site, and that caused some glitches on some buildings. That's why there's like some trees on some of the buildings. It looks a bit strange. But again, that's just the downside of using a generated map. Yeah. So that is how the auto-generated city was made. Okay. Now, because this is a generated map, it's always based on a real city. As far as the plugin is concerned, the plugin that I'm using for Blender currently only allows you to take from real cities. Now, there is another way. You can actually make your own city layout if you're smart enough and you're dedicated enough. The way you do that is Blender has its own function for generating should I explain this? It has its own function for auto-generating city layouts, which means they are not based on any real street. Okay. The upside of that, the good thing about that, means that you can actually use piece-by-piece buildings, make them very detailed, and then replicate them many times to create a larger city like this, which means that you have the benefits of both sides, having the detailed close-ups of the buildings you modeled yourself, and generating them en masse so that you don't have to place them on your own. The problem with Blender's system is that if you aren't careful, the cities can look very computer generated. So if I look from the city from above, right, you can see that the grid is not perfect. See, the grid has stuff like curved roads. It has interesting turns and twists. All right, those are the key to making a very natural-looking city. If you were to make a Blender auto-generated city using your own models, what might happen is that it would make them all on a perfect grid, right? Which is not natural because there is no city. No city has everything aligned perfectly. That's not really how a city works. So you would have to pull a lot of twists and turns on yourself to make that city look realistic. So that's the pros and cons of making a city in Blender and different methods. All right, so I'm actually going to render the scene now. I haven't actually talked much about rendering, which I am going to talk about now. So what rendering is, basically it's converting the 3D model, the image that you have in your camera, and turning that into a flat image, right? So the render output is basically the final thing that you see on screen, and you can use it to, obviously, when you render an animation, it's converting every single one of those images that are moving in your scene into frames, which are obviously make up the animation, right? So I'm going to show you some rendering tools. I'm actually going to render this image right now. Okay. Let's see, I'm going to pull that in. So this is what this city looks like when it is rendered. Okay. Again, this is a long shot, so that's why it looks good from the top. And for my purposes, I think this would be perfect. For say if you're flying a plane overhead, something like that, or you're introducing the overall city, like in your story or something like that. Before you show your characters, this would be perfect, right? It doesn't have to be too detailed, and it can just be auto-generated. So I'm actually using the very, very weakest render engine in Blender. Now, you're going to be asking, well, what's a render engine? I haven't talked about... Blender has 3 different ways you can render an image. 3 different modes, or what we call engines, right? If you can see on the right-hand side here, this thing that says render engine, there is Eevee, right? There's Workbench, right? And there's Cycles, okay? Now, Eevee is the default one, okay? It's like a mix between, it's like the middle ground, okay? The Eevee engine will make your image look relatively good, but also process it very fast, okay? What I mean by that is that if I were to render again, count the number of seconds it takes to render. 1, 2, 3. 3 seconds to render this image, right? So that means that if you're doing a animation that has 200 frames, right, it'd be 200 times 3 seconds, which means it takes 600 seconds to render the whole animation. Okay? So this is pretty fast. It's good. My computer isn't that powerful either, so, if you have a more powerful computer, it's going to render those images faster. Now, the second engine is called Workbench, all right? Let me actually render that. It took about 1 second to render. Super fast, but it only renders without texture, okay? So, it's not great. It's the only reason why you'd use Workbench is to basically get a very quick snapshot of the movements in your animation, the outlines of your buildings and your characters. It's really just for testing purposes, okay? You don't want to use this for the final project because it's not meant for the final product, okay? Now, the most powerful render engine in Blender is called Cycles, right? I'm going to start up a render of Cycles, but because Cycles gives out the most professional looking image, it also takes the longest to render. And if I'm going to put this up, you can see it working here now. Okay. It takes a very, very long time to render an entire image. And I'm not going to go through the entire image because it would just take way too long, right? But it does give the most professional looking image. As you can see, it's not really showing up very well, but if you can see what's in the center, the image is already looking way better than both Workbench and Eevee. Okay, so next time if you're going to render an animation in Blender, or you want to do animation in Blender, it's good to bear in mind these 3 different engines, right? Because it really depends on what you like, the quality level you want to make versus how much time or processing power you have at home. Okay, so as you can see, it's taken way more than 10 seconds. It probably take about, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes to complete 1 frame. So if you want to calculate how long that it takes for a 200 frame animation, it's a very long time, right? So I'm going to close that now. We don't need to see the rest of the Blender cycles. But I'm going to move on to one final point before we take on questions, okay? And that point is lighting, right? Now, I talked a little bit about lights in the previous classes. Lights are very essential to a good render, okay? I have this little light here at the top, and I'm going to go to the properties of this light. Blender has 4 different modes of lighting, okay? The first one is point, which is a default. Point is like a light bulb, right? Just imagine a point light as if it was a light bulb. That's basically how it works. Sun is a light that basically shines on everything on top, which means that it's got no it hasn't got a direction of effect. It basically floods the entire screen with light. Okay. Spotlight does exactly what you think it does. It's a spotlight. I don't really need to explain that. And area light is kind of like the sun, but it shines on like a specific area. So if I only wanted light to come on, say, this area of Los Angeles, then I'd move the light closer to that area, and it would only illuminate that part of the city. Okay. Now I'm going to show you. I'm going to test out each of these lights. Right. So start with the point. The point light is probably not going to be very powerful. It's not going to illuminate much at all. Okay. I'm just going to switch the render to Eevee so it's faster. Let's render that. There you go. This is the point light. As you can see, basically the whole city is dark. The reason why it's dark is because there is no light. The only light is that tiny point light sitting above the city, which doesn't give off any light at all for the purposes of the size of the city, relatively. Okay. Let's switch to the sunlight, which we were doing just earlier. You'll find out that the sunlight is the one that works best, in my opinion, because it shines on everything in the frame, which is, as you can see, every single building is illuminated to some degree, and you've got shadows as well, which is really good. Okay. All right. Let's switch the light to spotlight and see what happens. Right. Render that. Okay, you can't see that very well. I'm going to have to move the spotlight a little bit. It's going to move that closer to over here. And I'm going to set the camera. Alright, let's render that and see what happens. Okay, so it doesn't seem like much has changed. It might be because my light is not powerful enough. I'm actually going to up the spotlight power to very powerful, okay, so that you can see exactly what's going on. Nope. Alright, let's see what the issue is. Maybe we do that. Let's render that again. Okay, interesting. I'm actually going to make the spotlight bigger so that you guys can see more accurately. I might just move that down to one part of the city. Okay, that's good. All right, let's try that again. What's going on? Is that not powerful enough? There we go. Okay. I'm just going to move the camera. All right, let's render it now, and I can show you. All right, so this is the spotlight. Okay, does exactly what a spotlight does, right? Okay. So this shouldn't be too surprising. Okay, so the spotlight basically shines on a giant circle on a very specific area of the city, and that's what it does. Okay. Now let's switch to area light, so that I can show you the final light. Okay. It's going to render that. Okay. I have to zoom out for this one. The light's pretty powerful on this one. All right, there you go. This is an area light. Obviously, it looks way too bright. The reason is because I am using, I'm basically putting in way too much power into the light compared to the spotlight I did earlier. So that's why it looks so bright. Okay. So yeah, I would use area lights very, very carefully, because if you use too many of them, they will make this happen. All right. Anyway, I'm going to switch back to sun because that's default, so you guys can see that more clearly. And just switch back to sun. Okay, cool. Right. There we go. And that is how I made my city in Blender. Okay. Now for you guys, again, I can't show you each individual step of the city making process, but hopefully when if you guys are going to look up something like any kind of city tutorial on YouTube or Blender tutorial, hopefully the concepts I've explained are going to make understanding those tutorials easier. And in the future, when you do more advanced things in Blender, you can remember what I said, and that's going to guide you through the process of making the Blender city. Okay. All right, now I'm going to answer any questions that you might have uh, for this topic and Blender in general. So, fire away. I will bring up the OpenStreetMap plugin if I can find it. Just find that real quick. OpenStreetMap. All right. This is the website I used to get my maps. All right, my city generations. You can search up, I don't know. Let's go to Sydney. Okay, go to Sydney. What I can do is, it won't show up the satellite imagery, but it will show up the map version. And what you can basically do is take a screenshot. Let's see, there should be a button somewhere here. There should be a. Oh, there we go. Export. Should be this, I think. Right. So what it does is you get these things called coordinates. Right. Basically, it's a bunch of numbers, and you copy those numbers into the plugin on Blender, which you do have to. What was it? You actually have to download yourself. It's separate from this map plugin. Okay. So what you do is when in the plugin, there's going to be a field for these values, and you basically paste them in. And when that does, the plugin will search for that area of the map, and then copy those coordinates and generate a city based on those, whatever's in this area. So if you're wondering how I got my city, the city snapshot to generate that map, I got it from OpenStreetMap. Okay. The actual plugin itself, which I'm going to pull up, let me get the plugin, Blender OSM. All right, here we go. So the plugin I used is called Blender OSM. You can download this for free, but okay. So first of all, you would want to Google Blender dash OSM, and it will give you this website called gumroad.com/Blender OSM. This is the website. Okay. Now it says here name a fair price. Okay. You can actually you can just type in 0. Okay. If you put in $0, then you can actually just buy it for nothing. Basically, you can download it for free. Okay. So those are the two tools I use to generate the city. Also, I will just link you to the YouTube tutorial that I used to for reference. Let me pull that. Where is it? Here we go. Okay. All right. So it's this video here. Okay. And the channel is called CG Geek. You can find if you just Google like create any city, city creation in Blender. Here's the first result you'll find. Okay. So so yeah, there you go. Okay. Let me. Is that a question? So what is the question you're asking? I'm not sure if that is a question at all. All right. Anyway, so that's the software you can use to assist Blender and make it do the same thing I did. Okay. Now, obviously, his tutorial is way more in depth than mine, because I only did the very basic part of his tutorial, just basically making the city and putting the textures on. He actually includes lighting and individual texturing of each building. So it's kind of it's a lot more complex than mine. Okay, but if you have the time and effort, go ahead, have a go. All right, any more questions? All right, if there aren't any more questions, we might just end it here. It's 4:35, and we kind of started a little bit earlier today. So yeah, you can just type in chat if you want to know any like uh, software related things or Blender related things that you need the links to or anything like that. I might actually just put that in. Oh, hang on. Yeah. Right, that's all good. So, Blender. Right. Oh, right. Next week we're going to be next week we're going to be doing a little bit of character modeling. I hopefully if I can get that set up, you guys will be able to, you know, you guys will be able to model some very basic characters. Okay, and if I have time, I might also show you guys how to rig them. I don't think I'll have enough time to animate them, but you know, you guys have done character. You guys have done Blender animation. So if you guys just remember how to the animation process for those like the jet planes and those kind of things, it's exactly the same for character rigging. You're just dealing with characters instead. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for coming, guys. Hopefully you will look forward to next week's lesson, which I think will be very interesting. What we might do actually is that if I can get the characters to interact with the city that I made today, that would be really fun. So I'll update you guys on that next week. I hope you enjoyed this class, and we will see you next week. Okay. Thank you, guys. Yes, we will still be on YouTube for next week. Now the cool thing is, currently my setup is not optimal. Okay, so the issue is that obviously I don't have a great connection. I'm doing the best I can, but the processing power on my computer is not great. I will be moving to an office in city sometime next term. If that happens, and we do any more online classes in the future, I will be able to stream like any other professional streamer, which means that it's just the best way of doing things. Oh, right. Also, because with the deal with the classes now, they might be permanently switching to online streaming. Now, it's not decided yet whether it will be a stream or it will be a videos. So if they are actually pre-recorded videos, that would mean that you guys don't need to, have a good internet connection or anything like that. You guys can just watch some like YouTube videos, which is good and bad, I guess, because it means you guys can't interact with me. But I can give you, more professional lessons that way. It all depends on currently the coordinator Andrew, and we'll see what happens in the future. Okay. So that's that, and we'll see you next week.